Welcome to Find Your Next Six-Figure Infill Deal. Today is Friday, March 27th, 2026, and today we're going to cover a cottage village in West Boise that has it's actually the best deal we've ever had on here. Has potential for over $700,000 in profit. Before that, I'm gonna get into a little bit of my background, and then we'll cover details of our deal list, and then how our offer works. So my name is Zach Matson. I'm a developer and builder here in Boise. I got started back in 2013 buying duplexes. I lived in one side and fixed up the other. The very first duplex I bought, I was able to live in it, and the other side paid my rent. That's extremely hard to find anymore, but it got me passionate about real estate and the power of real estate. In 2016, I transitioned to full-time flipping and did that for a few years before transitioning over into infill development, which is what I'm doing full-time now. So I bought my first deal in 2019, went through entitlements, the horizontal development and vertical build. And then in the meantime, I bought a few more deals of that nature as well while I was doing that. And then 2023 decided it was time to start scaling up a little bit more. Bought a couple more deals. And then last year, I basically ended up seeing just a lot of opportunity on the market that there's no way I could possibly buy all the deals myself. And so it kind of started getting me to think outside the box and figure out how I could help other people capitalize on infill development, but also bring in revenue for my company. So it's kind of a win-win situation, what I created for my company. And so I created this infill deal list, and what I do is I basically identify infill deal properties, and I'm set up a system where we can quickly identify, underwrite, and then I present a deal of the week. And then I keep track of pretty much every single infill deal in Boise, Meridian, and Garden City. I do look at stuff outside of it, outside of those three towns, but we see enough deals in Boise, Meridian, and Garden City that we mostly just track those. Um, but yeah, if you're interested, if you're listening to this or watching this and you're interested in getting access to our list full time, we just have a few things that we have you do to get full time access. The first is that if you are a realtor and are looking for deals either for yourself or for your clients, we have you watch or attend in person that we do occasionally. Our two parts infill development. Part one is covers kind of the basis of what we do with infill development, and then part two covers our build process and what to expect there. And then we also have a part three, which just covers the deal list more in depth and how it works. And then we just have you sign an agreement stating that if you're going to use our strategies that we're suggesting with your buyers, that you'll introduce us to your buyers early on in the process. And that just allows us to back everything that we're going to show you today. And then a bonus to realtors as well is we actually offer free marketing campaigns that you can co-brand with us. So we send out our deal of the week sheet. You can actually co-brand that and send that out to your network. And we also have other marketing materials you can use as well. And then if you're a investor, you can also get full-time access to our list. And we have you go through a similar process. We have you watch the three-part training series. Those three parts are tailored towards investors. There's one tailored towards realtors, the other is tailored towards investors. And then we just have you, so if you don't have a realtor that you're working with already, we just have you work with a realtor that's been through the training. So if you don't have a realtor, we can refer you to one of our realtor partners. If you have a realtor that you're already working with, you can bring them along as well. We just have them go through that same series that we just discussed here. And then the last thing is we just have you sign an agreement saying that if you're going to use our services and implement our strategy, you're going to if you're going to implement our strategy on the identified properties, that you're going to use our services. So it's kind of an all-in-one deal. We're fully vertically integrated, and I'll kind of explain a little bit more of that of how that works as well. And then a few things regarding how we get paid. So number one is, we're a developer and builder. So we have our general contracting service that we offer on all these properties. That's partly why we're able to offer this, is we can start with the end in mind and work backwards. We're also, again, fully vertically integrated, so we can do the entitlements, the horizontal development, and the vertical build. And because of my background in, investing myself in all these different ways to invest, we can do all the due diligence and underwriting for you as well. So one of the ways that we make money is we charge you a consulting fee that's paid at the purchase when you close on the home, and that just covers the system that we've set up, and then also the due diligence that we put into all these properties. We have about a 200 or a little under 200 point checklist that we go through on all the properties that we go through due diligence on. And so that just covers the time and effort that we put into the due diligence. We do about 90 to 95% of the due diligence on all these deals once you have it under contract. And so for that, we charge you a consulting fee. And then we charge you entitlements fee as basically just based on the hours that we have into it. So we just charge you on our actual hours worked. And then we coordinate with all the city and county agencies and the professionals. So we still hire, all the engineers and everything that's required. We just coordinate between all those parties. Then we just charge you a management fee for that on a monthly basis, based on actual hours worked. And then we get into the development and buildings. We just charge you our general contracting fee. And that's ultimately a big reason why we're doing this, is we're basically creating our own pipeline full of business. Okay, a little bit more on how our deals work here. So we created the system. I call it the 6 figures in 36 months or less infill deal offer. The reason why I created this was because I kind of understood that there's a little bit of a high bar to get into development. Most people don't understand it, and there's not a lot of education out there. So, it's not a well-known strategy, and it's involves more steps and more complication than most people care to deal with. So I created the system basically understanding that investors don't want to lose money on a bad deal, or or they just don't know the process, and they're worried that the projects will take too long, or contractors will cut corners, and then also just not having any control or visibility. So we built this system specifically to eliminate these concerns. And so with our system as well, you stay in control of the capital and the decisions. So you're not investing in somebody else's deal. You actually own the deal. You're making all the big decisions. We're just doing all the heavy lifting for you. So the core components of this, we do expert deal underwriting. So we vet, analyze, and underwrite every deal on our list. So we're not just kind of guessing at numbers. We've done all these deals ourselves. So we know we have a big understanding on what it's going to take on each one of these deals. We also offer and negotiation support. So once you are interested in a property, we will communicate with you and your realtor the best way and strategy to get these deals under contract, and also get it under the terms that works for everybody, and being able to take these down. A big thing with these infill deals and land in general, is it's not like a regular home purchase. So, a standard home purchase, you get it under contract, you get your home inspection done, and as long as that inspection turns up all right, then you proceed with close. For the most part, there's a little bit more to it, but land deals are just a little bit more complicated than that. So we make sure that everybody's on the same page and understand what we need to do. The third part is we offer step-by-step due diligence. So like I said, I have a little under 200 point checklist that we go through with the due diligence, and we do most of that for you. There's a few things that you do as part of that. And one of it is, if you're going to use financing, arranging that, or, figuring out where you're getting your capital from. And then also if there's an existing house, if you're going to rent it out, coordinating with, if you're going to do a property management team or whatever. And we have referrals that we can refer you to those things as well, but you're kind of responsible for putting all that together. Number 4 is if there's an existing house, because we're general contractors, so we can renovate the existing house if that's necessary. I'd say on half or so of the homes that we that have an existing house, we have to, we're going to want to remodel it before you rent it out. And some of them you remodel at the very end to get the most profit out of it. So we can do that for you. It's all part of the cost that we build into our system. And then we also offer entitlement management. So I talked about that earlier, where we do the entitlements for you. So we just run through that process. We coordinate with all the professionals and all the city and county agencies. And then we do the construction on the horizontal and vertical. A few bonuses that we give you. So we're going to give you our ultimate guide introduction to infill development. That'll give you a kind of a base level knowledge of infill development and how it works. Then we're going to provide you with our due diligence checklist. So as soon as you get a property under contract, we're going to share that due diligence checklist with you so you can actually follow along as we check those boxes off. And anything that comes up that's, a yellow or red flag, you'll see that right away. And we'll be in constant communication with that through that checklist. And then offer number 3. So at the very end of due diligence, right before the end, so we're going to complete a 1-page underwriting worksheet, and that's what we're going to base our guarantee on. And then this acts as the final go or no-go underwriting for you to base your final investment decision on. And then at the end of the project, we're going to compare the results of that sheet with the actual results of the project. Number 4, so we're going to provide you with our entitlement process checklist and projected timeline. So once we're through with due diligence and we start the entitlements process, we'll upload that entitlements process checklist and timeline so you can follow along with that process. And then once we start construction, we're going to do that same thing for our construction process and also our inspection checklist. So we have a checklist for all the trades that we go back through and check on as trades complete their jobs. And then the 6th thing what we do when you actually have a house under construction is we provide a third-party new home inspection report. And it's not just a report at the very end. We actually provide this report. We inspect at 4 phases. So we actually inspect it once it's framed and roughed in with the mechanicals. And then we do a drywall inspection, and then interior and exterior finishes, and then a final inspection. And this just basically ensures that you're getting a perfect house when it's all said and done, and you get to see what happened behind the walls, and if anything came up, how it was fixed. And then number 7, so we host a monthly progress call where we review all of our current projects for our clients and the progress we made the previous month, as well as any challenges that came up. In fact, this week is the last Friday of the month. So right after this call, we have a call for the project review. That is a separate link that you would have received in your email. So if you got our emails or are getting our emails, you can click on that link and register for that call. Otherwise, it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well. And then the 8th bonus is we give you our entitlements guarantee. So what that means is when we're all the way through due diligence, we're going to have a final unit count. Now, some of these, it's just a single split, so that's easy. But some of these, like today, we have a unit count of an additional 11 homes. And so when we get through due diligence and we check off all those boxes, we're going to guarantee that we can give you those 11 houses, or maybe it's 10, or maybe it's 12. But if anything changes through entitlements, and so if we say we can get you 11 new houses and then we get through entitlements and it's only entitled for 10, we're actually going to waive our consulting fee on the next project that you do, or we're going to apply it towards the development cost when you go horizontal. So depending on what your next strategy is or what your strategy is, we're going to do that. And then number 9, so we're going to also do our underwriting guarantee. So this is our profit guarantee. So this is if that we guarantee that if the project doesn't meet at least 100% of the profit projected at the final underwriting, we're going to refund you up until it does. And then the limits on that is 50,000 per lot split up to 2 units. And then anything more than 2, we do 20,000 per home. And that's up to a maximum of 200,000. So up to 10 homes, we do 200,000. So it's basically just giving you an extra buffer layer. Well, number 1 is, we're backing our numbers. So we're going in really conservatively. We're doing our due diligence thoroughly to make sure that the number is going to be correct. Our whole goal is to underpromise and overdeliver. So like on this deal today, When it's all said and done, once we're through due diligence, if it stays at 718,000, we're going to guarantee that, and it'll be backed up by 200,000. So you actually have another $200,000 buffer that you'll make 718 no matter what, as long as it doesn't go below that 518 profit threshold. But either way, it basically gives you extra buffer there for your risk tolerance. Okay, I'm going to jump into the deal this week here, and I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. So this was actually our deal of the week last week as well, but so interesting story. We actually have two other cottage deals that we're actually currently working on. Number one is the one is under contract already with another buyer. We actually got it locked up off market, and I presented it a few weeks ago now. And it was actually, when I presented it, it was actually a 12 home subdivision. Well, when we kind of reviewed the code further and reanalyzed it as a cottage, it's way more profitable to do a cottage village and way easier and faster as well. So we got that one, and then previous to that, we had already been kind of talking with another homeowner that wanted to develop her property. And so we looked at a few different ways, and the cottage village was, again, kind of the way to go with that one. So we've been kind of in talks with that. Well, this last Tuesday, we had a early assistance meeting with the city of Boise. So I was able to get a lot of clarification on cottage villages. So if you know anything about the zoning code, there's not a lot of information in the zoning code, and a lot of times it can be interpreted a few different ways. So number one, when I looked at the zoning code for cottage villages and the incentives, so last week I thought we could do more units because I read one of the incentives the way it's worded. But when I was at the planning and zoning uh, agency, they told me that that wasn't the intent behind the code. So I could either, change my approach to it, or I could, kind of try to butt my head against the wall and, even go the legal route of saying, even though you're saying the intent is different, the wording says this, and I think I can do this, but that typically doesn't work out well, and you waste a lot of time and money doing that. So we reanalyzed it. We did find out good news though as well, both on this deal and a couple of the other deals that we're doing, is that it's actually allowed in the code now that you can actually sell the existing house outside of the cottage village. So when I was analyzing the other deals, I thought that that existing house essentially had to become part of the project, and because it was larger than the cottages, you couldn't sell it individually. But they've actually carved out in the code where you can actually sell it individually. It's still the same, kind of sold the same way that the cottages are, but it can be sold individually. So getting into this specific deal. So I underwrote this two different ways this time. So this way that I'm highlighting here is with a traditional mortgage that you get with, a traditional investment loan with like 20% down. Depending on the loan, it might be, 25% down, might be a little bit less than that, but we underwrite it with 20% down and then paying for entitlements out of pocket. So the purchase price is 550,000. This is zoned R1C, which allows for up to 12.4 units an acre. It's just under an acre, so we actually get a total of 12 units. The existing house is going to count towards one of those, so we can actually do an additional 11 cottages. When I underwrote this last week, I underwrote it with 15 cottages, but I didn't have the existing house as part of that deal. So essentially you were paying 550 just for the land. Whereas in this deal, you're actually buying the house at 550, and it's probably worth right about 550. So the land is essentially free, which is huge, especially on this type of deal. So this is your total capital invested. I'll kind of get into where there's other money that has to get spent, but that can be leveraged. And then this is your total profit. So with these cottage villages, the process with this is kind of unique. So you're not doing a subdivision. So that essentially eliminates like a year of timeline. Typically on a subdivision, you have to go through approvals first. Those approvals take typically a year on a subdivision. And then after that, you have to put in all the horizontal infrastructure, and then you have to get the plat signed. So that whole process takes another year, and then you can go vertical. So you're not even starting construction for 2 years on a typical subdivision. Well, on cottage villages, they've codified it so you can actually get approval from planning and zoning. It's a staff level review, so we're expecting to have decisions made or an approval made on this one that is already under contract. We're expecting to have decisions made in 3 months, so we'll have an approved project in 3 months. After that, you still have to get your building permits and your civil plans approved, so we're expecting that to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So we should be breaking ground in probably 9 months. I'm not gonna count on it being 3 months after, or 6 months total. I'm gonna count on it being probably more like 9 months. But we're starting construction in 9 months, and then you can actually do the horizontal and vertical at the same exact time, which you can't do on a subdivision. So you can actually build the units and put in the horizontal infrastructure. So you're cutting off a year of the timeline. So you're in and out in 2 years. So essentially a finished product in 18 months ish, give or take. And then, we give you another basically 6 months to exit the property, get all the units sold. So this return is just ridiculous. In fact, if I wasn't so adamant about doing my system this way and offering this to investors, obviously I'm going to make good money as well. But uh, yeah, this is a deal that I would do myself. Most of these I do it myself. I just can't buy them all. Okay, and then we also have on this deal. So once the house is sold, this is the cash we expect you would get back from it. I'll kind of cover that here in a little bit. This is your capital remaining in the deal. So basically after a year and a half, you get 100,000 back. In fact, probably about the year and a half mark. Essentially, once the cottages are framed, you can finalize the plat and then sell off that original house. And then this is your total equity remaining in the deal. This is the deal. So this is your capital returned after all but one of the houses is sold. So this gets returned back to you. So this is pays back your money back to where you have zero capital, and then you're also profiting 255,000. And then this is all but one cottage being sold. So you actually get all your money back, make $255,000 profit, and you end up with a cottage for free at the end. You can also leverage more of those. So if you want to keep more of them as rentals or whatever, like, you can essentially probably keep 4, 5, 6 of them with some kind of leverage and not much cash flow. And then this is just what we anticipate property taxes and insurance being on those. So we calculate out what your cash flow would look like. This would be true cash flow if you're property managing it. And then these short-term rentals are based on NOI, and this is just pulling off of AirDNA. So it's not doing a deep dive aside from just the numbers that AirDNA spits out at you. So 11 units, this is the entitlement cost per unit. These cover all of our costs in there. So what our costs, but also like engineering, all that fun stuff. This is the infrastructure cost. So when I looked at this more in depth this week, there's and also having more information, there's just a lot less infrastructure that has to go in with these as well than you have normally for subdivisions, because essentially this is all one lot, and you're not doing a subdivision. There's just a lot less required. So this cost went down. It's still putting in all the required stuff. And through due diligence, this could go up or down slightly, but it's going to be pretty close. And then this is per unit once that's all developed and ready to build, although essentially we're going to develop and go vertical at the same time. So this is kind of moot, but we do this for every project. So if you want like sellable lots, these are not individually sellable lots. So again, this point is kind of moot. But it gives you an idea of like what the value would be if you had an entitled project. You could kind of work backwards on what that entitled project would be worth before you start construction. And then the other thing we did too is we talked to a lender this last week, and that's based out of Seattle, and he has a lot of guys that are doing the DADUs over there, where they're basically building ADUs and then splitting them off and selling them individually. So he actually sent me a floor plan that was 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths with 1,000 square feet. I haven't played around with the floor plans yet, but I know we can get, just from experience, I know we can get at least 3 bedroom, 2 bath in 1,000 square feet. So instead of doing 2 bedroom, 2 bath, or 2 bedroom, 1 bath, we can do 3 bedroom, which increases your resale price even more and makes it a little bit more desirable. So that's pretty huge. And I'm just looking at the shapes that we can do. I know I can fit 3-2, maybe 3-2.5. Um, and that would be on 2 stories. And we could even, this site is big enough. And because we took a few units away, we'd actually even do a couple of them that are just a single story if we wanted to. And then with the resale prices here, so this is, I looked at comps that were, 2 and 3 bedroom in the area. There was no new construction this size, but 2 and 3 bedroom comparables were selling for over 400,000 or right at 400,000 that were like decently nice. So I'm really being conservative here. Number one is, the way these cottages work, the person doesn't actually own the land. They own a share in the land. So essentially they'd own 1/12 of the land and then they'd own their home, obviously. It's kind of like a condo, essentially, is how that works. So they still own a portion of the land, but it's not like their specific land that their house is sitting on, and then the house itself. But this would be by far the cheapest new construction in the area. Um, and I think realistically, this is probably on the conservative side. I could see these selling for 400 plus all day long. Just because if you look at anything under 400,000 on the market, there's nothing really that great on the market. So this is your profit per unit, factoring all your, your purchase costs, your entitlements, your development, your construction, and your loan costs. And then we have the existing house. So there's no current pictures of it, but it is being rented right now. And I looked at when it was sold last, I think in 2022, the pictures, and it was in pretty good shape. It's a little bit dated. So I just have this budget in here as a placeholder for basically making updates to it. But then I think it's worth, again, just checking with comps. It looks like it'd be probably worth right around 725 for the size that it is. It's about 3,100 square feet. And then your sales costs, and then this is your holding costs. So this is your mortgage payment in that time frame. And then if you rent it out, what you could expect for rental income. So you lose a little bit of money on that existing house just because of this difference in cost and then these sales costs. But you're not buying it for the house, you're buying it for the development. This is the total debt if you refinanced all the cottages, and then if you sold 10 of the cottages and kept one, this is the cash you would get back. So going back to what I first covered there. Okay, anybody watching this live have any questions on this specifically before I pull up the site plan here?
What's the downside risk on this? I mean, this seems pretty interesting, Zach.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is an insane deal. Obviously, like there's no such thing as something without risk. There's not, well, number one is 95% of the risk we're going to cover uncover in due diligence. So, but because I was already, kind of in the city about cottage villages, like I answered, all the questions that I had previously that wasn't clear in the code. Um, so the other thing that's kind of a question mark is how the financing will work. So you can get a regular mortgage on this, but because this is a condo plat, um, so at some point you have to roll into a construction loan when you go horizontal and vertical. Well, the main issue there is that you don't have this house separate from the project until after that construction is at least until the new units are framed. And so you would have to roll the debt you have on the house into the construction loan. So that doesn't look like it's a problem. It's just a question we'll have to make sure that we clarify with like the construction lenders that the numbers would work. But so far, looking at the numbers, it more than meets what typical lending requirements are. So I'm not too worried about it. It's just a question that we'll have to get answered during due diligence. But that's the main thing is basically you buy it with a traditional loan to kind of save costs. And then basically once it's approved, so in 9 months, you would refinance into a construction loan. And then the downside with any development project is just obviously like you really want to be cognizant of the timeline and uh, the process, but also making sure you're not flooding the market with 11 homes when the market isn't going to support 11 homes. So for example, like before we start construction, so I'd say right around the time we have the approved project, we would do a further market analysis on the absorption rate that we think that we can sell units, and we could even start doing pre-sales for the units and taking deposits on the units. And then ideally you can get 25 to 50% of them pre-sold with deposits made on them. And then you can just basically build them all. And then you have half the units are finished and on the market. But what I wouldn't want to do is build all 11 and then put them all on the market at the same time, because then you're competing with yourself. Unless we know that, or we think that they'll all sell within 3 months. So the way around that is to, if we say, okay, in 3 months, we should be able to sell 6 of these, well, then you build 6 of them, or even doing rolling starts. Maybe you build two, and then a month later you start the next two, and then a month later you start the next two, and so that way you're not flooding the market with inventory and competing with yourself. Any questions there?
No, I think that you covered all that. That's yeah. And then
And again,
so so
this is a lot of stuff we cover more in depth, like when you're actually under contract. But that's great questions for um wondering how to jump into one of these.
and then Zach, this would be similar to there's a community in Garden City that I think is similar to this, like on the right
Yeah.
hand side. Okay, exact same thing as far as like the land, etc. Got it.
Yep, pretty much. And I'll show you the site plan. This is the property, so 4403 Maple Grove. What's interesting about this, so the seller actually got this approved for apartments. Well, I know from analyzing dozens of apartments over the last couple of years, like I hardly even look at them anymore because they're like they don't pencil with the refinance rates. So this is actually already approved for apartments. So we'd have to go through and get reapprovals. That's not an issue. It's just that this is he has it marketed as I think 7 unit apartment, or maybe it's 11 units. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, he has it marketed as an apartment complex. But again, the problem with that is you build apartments and the rents don't support the high mortgage that you're paying on the finished product. And so you end up sinking, hundreds of thousands, or if not an extra $1 million just to buy your cash flow into it or your break even point.
Do you know if there's currently a tenant already in
There
there?
is. Yep.
What rents they're getting?
I don't know what they're getting for rent. I asked that question, but the agent didn't know.
Do you know how long like if they plan to stay or anything like that? Did he say?
No. It didn't sound like they were moving out, but I didn't actually get that in depth with it. I actually called him and he didn't answer, so I texted him and he just texted a couple responses back. So,
Okay.
but yeah, all good questions, and all like whoever's interested in this can definitely reach out to the listing agent. I'm gonna go over let me see if I can find the site plan. I'm gonna cover the site plan a little bit more in depth here. You guys got my email, but I'm gonna show you the Okay, so the current driveway, this is actually about where the current driveway is there, so I don't expect there being any issues with that. The city is going to require us put in a 10-foot detached sidewalk, so we'll just have to reroute the sidewalk. It's not a huge expense, but that is accounted for in all those costs. And then they require on these cottages that the parking is on the side or the back. And this actually has more than the required parking. In particular on these cottages, like they only require one parking spot per unit, but especially in this area where you don't really have any neighborhood streets. It's basically a busy road. You'd want more than the minimum parking, just so that people aren't having to park, a block away or a street away or whatever. So this has plenty of parking. This is the overhead of the existing house here. You could, again, once that is splittable, you split it off and sell it. And then these are the homes back here. So we took away 4 of the units that we had penciled, which actually I think works out a little bit better. You can actually make each of these have their own little backyard. In fact, we could even spread these out even a little bit more and maybe put 2 here and 4 over here, or maybe 5 over here, depending on how we want to set it up for the final. And then you also have this shared communal area here, which we could add amenities to this as well. The other project I'm working on, or one of the other projects I'm working on, I'm actually planning on doing some kind of cool shared space. So like doing maybe a dog park, but also doing possibly a swimming pool and cabanas and like a hot tub and sauna area. So lots of opportunities here to make it a really cool community. And I think you spend a little bit more on that stuff, and I think your per unit cost goes up, and it makes it more desirable, and I think it becomes even more profitable. So there's plenty of room to do that on this site as well. Okay, I'm going to jump back into any other questions with this deal.
Can you kind of just walk back through the numbers of this, Zach? I guess I'm just curious how 200 grand is going to get this done. Just with quick math, right? You use a DSCR loan, you put 25% down, closing costs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, this is 20% down, but yeah, I'd say anywhere from 15 to 25% down. I know and DSCR, you're probably 25, so it might take a little bit more cash because you're not going to see the rents there. I think the mortgage with 20% down is 3,100. So yeah, you might have to put a little bit more down if you do a DSCR. And then this is paying for the entitlements out of pocket. And then it's also covering your difference, your cash out of pocket for the difference between your rent and your income. And then after that, so once you have an approved project, so once you get through this entitlement period, well, now you've increased the value of the project, but you've also laid out, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the construction that has to go into it. So you have to put how many is, so this is, if you add this together, 280 per unit total. So on the horizontal and vertical, you have 280 per unit, and they're going to be worth 380. So if you look at those number, those are including interest costs. So that's about, oops, hang on one second. So that's a little less than 75% loan to value. And most construction lenders will do up to 75% loan to value pretty well all day. So essentially all the horizontal and vertical construction costs, there's no extra out of pocket for that. And our construction lenders will also, if the numbers are right, they will roll that construction interest into the loan as well.
Okay, so just to sum that up, you buy the property with whatever you can, DSCR conventional, 15 to 25% down. And based on your underwriting and the relationships that you have with lenders and the end product, you're saying this would effectively be financed 100% because the ARV supports it. That's what I hear you saying in simple terms.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Where it gets where we'll have to cover a little bit more, because this is a little different deal than what's typical. And these cottage villages, I think we're going to see more and more of these, especially because I'm currently doing 2, and I have another LOI out on another one, and then hopefully this one. But I think we're going to see more and more of these, so I think the financing will get less complicated. But the next thing is refinancing this house into the construction loan, or just, yeah, figuring out some way to make that work. Again, I think the numbers work even with refinancing this 400,000 into the construction loan. When I did the quick math earlier, the numbers laid out. And again, realistically too, these numbers are probably closer to 400, and then it's a no-brainer. It works for sure. The other way is a little bit close. And there's other ways too. So in the event that this has to get separated off before you start construction, there is a way to do that. It just takes longer. So you essentially have to do the subdivision first, and then split it. So it just adds that year back onto it. But there's possibilities there. Again, due diligence is kind of the time that you dive deep into more of that financing. So this was an interest. So actually before I did this, for this week, I was looking at the 613 South Latah Street. So this came on the market, briefly earlier this week, then they pulled it, and then they added it back, I think today. This deal is overpriced right now. They're wanting 650 for a house that's basically worth, it sounds like it's, it's a complete gut job or tear down. So the house itself is only worth 250, but it sits on 4 city lots. The problem with this is that, as a build job, it actually still doesn't make sense, because you're essentially paying, as just 4 lots, you're paying, let's see, 165-ish. Yeah, 165, I think, per lot, and you still have to put infrastructure in. So you're still gonna have to upgrade the sidewalks. You're still gonna have to bring in sewer and water to each lot. So there's costs associated with that. And so you end up losing money as a build job on this. So I think it's gonna end up sitting on the market. It needs to sell closer to what the actual value of the house is. But there is a value add here where you can actually build a cottage village on this one as well. So I actually did a site plan for this one as 8 units. This is actually just a couple blocks away from the one I'm currently doing. And then you could also keep the house and, actually both of these, you could keep the house. This one is this setup is you could keep the house on its own lot, just do a lot line adjustment to make sure the setbacks are proper. And then the other 2 lots you build the cottage village on. So that's what this is. You could build 5 cottages plus keep the existing house, but basically just split it off quicker, and fix it up and sell it. But the problem is, again, this number is way too high. So there's just not a whole lot of profit margin on that. It's okay, but it's not great, especially because this is just, I'd be surprised if somebody buys this, but there's more better deals like this, all over the place. So okay, and then the other thing that's still on the market is this Hill Road deal. I've covered this in depth, so if anybody's interested in this, but this is kind of northwest Boise, off of Hill Road. We could do some higher end homes there. That's 5 houses that we could do. And
You want
then
to
I wanted,
screen
oh,
back, so
go ahead.
can you share your screen so you can see what ones you're
Oh,
talking?
sorry. Didn't realize I stopped the share. Here I am talking at you guys. This is the Latah Street property here, so 613 South Latah. So yeah, so the listing agent has it marketed as a, basically build ready, like tear down the house and build 4 homes because it has 4 lots. But they're not build ready lots. You have to put in infrastructure to get them there. So just too high a price there. Sometimes, what I have seen, in fact, there was a deal that I was a deal of the week. It sold the same weekend. They had it listed for 900,000, which was a really good deal to me at that price. But it just finally closed. This was like 3 months ago. It went pending. But it sold the same weekend, went pending the same weekend. It was listed for 900. Well, I just found out yesterday when I looked at this, it sold for 750. So that's this deal on Castle Drive here. And this, look at the profits on this deal. This is like depending on how many units and how it's laid, how it was financed or set up. This is the profitability on this. So over $1 million on this with these final numbers. So that's just an example of like where some of these, even though it's overpriced, there's no harm in, reaching out to the listing agent and seeing how willing they are to negotiate, or you let it stew on the market for a while and, let the agent know that you're interested at the right price. This deal is also still in the market. I think they've had a couple, or at least I know they had one LOI. It sounds like they didn't accept it. But this is another like really good potential here. I'm not 100% sure on this price. It's listed at 500, but I know their LOI is for 400. So I think we could sneak in there and get it somewhere between 4 and 500. And then this deal is next to a property that we have a client that already owns it. I actually want to share this. I might actually have somebody buying this already, but I just want to share it anyway, just in case. Because this one could be part of a little bit bigger, better deal. So I'm going to show you the site here. So this is that parcel here. Either way, this can actually be its own development and kind of similar layout to this. This is what that would look like on its own. This is the parcel that we're already doing. So this is Xenia Street here. So there's already a street in place here. But what we can do if we can combine all of these is we could reroute this street, turn it into a private street instead of public street because it doesn't meet public street requirements anyway. So turn it into a private street and then basically make it into like a 31 unit development. We already own this parcel. We're trying to get somebody to buy this parcel that's on the market. And then this guy right here, I've actually been communicating with him, and it sounds like he's kind of could be interested in doing a partnership or possibly selling it as well. But I think he's more interested in doing like a partnership in the long-term deal. And then I just have to talk to this guy. But this one here actually doesn't as matter as much because no matter what, this parcel would stay the same. It's just a matter of if it gets developed or not. But it could essentially turn into a really cool project by doing at least these 3 parcels together. So I'm trying to get somebody to buy this one. I think I might have found that person, but it's not official yet. So, but this one's a good deal as well. This price is probably a little high, but I do have, so I've been talking to the listing agent, and the sellers have actually committed to doing an owner carry note for 0%. At least well, I should say for at least a year is what they committed to, but I think we could talk them into at least through entitlements, which could be, 9 months, could be 15 months, could be 18 months, but that's what I'm going to try to get them committed to is through entitlements. And they'll carry it for 35% down. And that's what I think these numbers reflect here. Yeah, so 35% down, and then you can refinance the rest of that into a construction loan. Those numbers work. So this one has a really good return as well. And that's for 9 units on that one. And
Can you
there's
show
an
us those numbers on the screen?
What's that?
You show us those numbers on the screen with that.
Oh, yes. Keep forgetting to share. Yeah, so this is 39th. So 272 total, so that covers entitlements. The other thing with this too, because we already have somebody that bought the property, the entitlements actually are less than they normally would be because you have some efficiencies there. Like we only have to get 1 set of CC&Rs. We only have to do we'll probably still have to do a test bit on this, or test bit with the geotech engineering, but the engineering costs, like once you start the engineering, it doesn't add much cost to add another connecting parcel. So there's some base level costs that you have to begin with no matter what, that you only pay a little bit extra to add parcels. So your entitlement costs go down. The horizontal costs, essentially those can get split up over more units. So that goes down per unit. So your profitability per unit goes up. And then theoretically, I could probably even negotiate some of the build costs as well. I just don't factor that into anything. So yeah, that's this deal. And then this 40th Street deal is a block over. This is a good deal as well right now. And I think that's all I'm gonna really discuss this week. I haven't fully analyzed these apartment deals. Again, I've analyzed dozens of these, and as apartments, I haven't seen one that works yet. And that's even like getting land for free when we split something off. So these commercial apartments, just with the way the long-term debt is on them and the construction costs, they don't typically work out. That's not necessarily the case for like duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. It's just for the commercial side. Okay, I think that's it. Does anybody have any final questions?